نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها ثم عرضهم على الملائكة فقال أنبئوني بأسماء هؤلاء إن كنتم صادقين قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم صدق الله مولانا العظيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد المعدن الجود الكرم وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم وصل عليه. We concluded last session on the words وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ. We didn't go beyond the word عَلَّمَ because in the word عَلَّمَ there is so much that requires to be understood. The English and Urdu translations do not reflect the sensitivity of the Arabic. So there's alima, which means he taught, and there's allama, which is the same meaning, but the emphasis is with great emphasis. So there's a difference between the two. The translators haven't reflected, certain English translators, to the best of my knowledge, haven't reflected this grammatical emphasis. Not just taught, but taught in extremity. This is what we call mubalagha, emphasis. But we need to understand this word allama, and he taught. I would like to refresh your memories to the first few sessions where we looked at the 5 sources of knowledge. Because some of the people sat here weren't present at that time. And I want to carry everyone with us rather than say, well, listen to those lectures and stuff like that. I'm going to carry on. Because those preliminary lectures contain this element which is necessary for you to bring in front of you now. There are 5 sources of knowledge. The first source of knowledge is our external 5 senses. How do I know that this desk is hard? I touch it. How do I know that there's a nice odor in here? I smell it. 5 senses. Easy. The second source of knowledge is our intellect. Our intellect tells us that this person sitting in front of you is a good person. Why is he a good person? You calculate. It's a calculation based on, well, he has done me favors in the past. He has, good contacts. He's a good network. So you have calculated in your mind a knowledge, and that calculation is based on data which you have to your disposal. But it doesn't require necessarily the 5 senses. 1 plus 1 is not something that can be seen. It's part of the intellect. So the external intellect resides in the head. And I'm afraid to say science comes to an end there. And science says, sorry, we have nothing more to offer you after this. Why? If we can see something, we can hear something, we can encapsulate something through our 5 senses or through our intellect, we'll accept it. And if we can't, I'm sorry, we can't. And I gave the example, I believe I gave the example last time of emotion, where science, we are at the mercy of science, where science says, well, 24 weeks, 20 weeks, 18 weeks, and the bar keeps changing because science keeps changing. So you ask the question to yourself, our understanding is the subject of science, but science itself is evolving. So if science is defective, as in immature, it's maturing, we have to concede, if we rely entirely upon science, that our scientific knowledge is also the subject of evolution and the subject of maturity, if I put it in a black way. Because some scientists don't like that talk being told them immature, or you're defective, or you're not complete. They like to hear words like you're evolving, because that's what's taught in schools, colleges, universities. Our scientific knowledge is evolving. But scientific evolution of knowledge is contingent upon two factors. What are they? External five senses and the intellect. Then you have a third source of knowledge. Could it be mobile phones that interfere? No, I'm just yeah, okay. Then you have, so as far as the world we live in today, you are offered two sources of knowledge. But the Quran and Sunnah offers three further sources of knowledge. The third source of knowledge is where you have external five senses, you have internal five senses. Internal five senses, how? They operate and they come into play when you go to sleep. So you see people when you go to sleep. I don't like to use the word dream, because in the world we live in, the word dream can actually be quite derogatory. And if you want to patronize someone, they dream on. Because science has degraded dreams to the world of fantasy and illusion. But the more we go into the Quran and Sunnah, we realize that's the real world, this is the fake world. Anyway, we'll talk about dreams at the appropriate juncture. So, sorry, what was I saying?
Third source of knowledge.
Third source of knowledge. Science has no understanding of this third source, but it cannot deny it. Because everyone sitting in this room has experienced things like deja vu, experienced seeing people that you've never seen before, experienced, and tell me if I'm out of touch, you've experienced certain things that you have experienced, and then those things have come true. And you cannot fathom how, what, but it is a knowledge. And that third source is based on your five senses, internal five senses. So you close your eyes, you still see. You go to sleep, but you still hear. And so and so. That's the third source of knowledge. The fourth source of knowledge is the internal intellect. But this intellect operates on a very different platform. This intellect in here is no different to a calculator. Whatever goes in, whatever it sees, it churns out. So you behave good towards me, my calculator will tell me this is a good person. You behave rudely towards me, my calculator will say avoid him or her. That's how this calculator, whatever data you put in, it churns out an answer for you. It's very crude and in some respects very rude. It doesn't care, it's very cold, very callous, very unemotional. And those people who think with their minds, who are now at the moment in power in the world, who are slaves of their mind, their detachment to emotions, unbelievable, how they are emotionally detached. I won't go into that anyway, that's not my subject for today. So the fourth source of knowledge is the internal intellect. Where does that reside? It doesn't reside here, it resides in your heart. And that intellect doesn't operate on the same protocols as this. It doesn't base its decisions on how you treat me. I will treat you. Or whether you text me or respond to my text, I will treat you accordingly. This intellect operates on different protocols. And it says, I'm sorry, if I like you, however you treat me, that's not going to be effective. Why? Because in the equation is something called love. And I'm not going to have a whole session on what is love. But the point is that this intellect operates on, you go to a shop and you buy instinctively. It's not based on you've read, you've done research, you just buy. That's your heart. Or when I bought I think it was my third car, I bought it without the knowledge and permission of my honourable mother, and when she saw it, she was infuriated. She said, "Look at this car, look at this one, look at this thing." And after giving me a half an hour lecture, she said, "The colour's nice then." And she said, "You can keep it now." So the heart said, well, forget all those defects, the colour's nice. That's all that matters. So we make decisions on a daily basis with our hearts, but the frequency of those decisions has become very, very less. The difference between us and our grandfathers and our forefathers is they made decisions through this intellect, we make decisions through this intellect. And that's why our socialization is totally changed, has totally changed. Whereas their socialization was based on this intellect. It wasn't based on what's my relationship with you. Tu kaun, main kaun. It wasn't based on that. It was based on, look, you're a fellow human being and that's good enough for me. And I will be kind to you and I will be considerate to you. And my manners won't be because I work in a shop as a sales assistant and I have to be kind to you. And if I don't, that's because it's part of my job profile. I sometimes see sales assistants and how polite they are. And I ask myself this question, would they be polite to me if they weren't in this role? So it's part of that role. And that's the intellect. The intellect says, your part of your role is this. You have to be polite to people. But will you be polite to people if you're not obliged to be polite to people? That's a matter of the intellect of the heart. Sorry, I'm slightly digressing. Just to show you how important this is in understanding this. So you have the internal intellect, which operates, and we'll talk more about the internal intellect because there's a lot more about the internal intellect in the Quran. Then you have the fifth source of knowledge, which many people in this room actually don't realize. And the funny thing is, everyone sat here has this source of knowledge, but you don't know A, how to use it, or whether you have it in the first place. And that source of knowledge is wahi, revelation. And in your mind, the first question would be, well, isn't wahi for prophets? The word wahi is used in the Quran for prophets and non-prophets, but as a technical term, when we apply wahi, when we use the word wahi, we specifically refer to prophets. Because there's a legal difference between the wahi of a prophet and a wahi of a non-prophet. So just to make life easier for people, technicians have invented words to assist people so that they don't get confused. So we say ilqa, and they say ilham. Don't say wahi, you can't say wahi comes to non-prophets, because that wahi which comes to prophet doesn't come to non-prophets, but still the Quran refers to that as wahi. I'm just clarifying that point. But everyone sat in this room on a daily basis is a recipient of wahi. But you don't know what moment you have been given wahi and you don't realize. I shouldn't use the word wahi because I don't want people thinking that I am trying to equate it to the wahi given to Anbiya. So let's use the word technicians used, and that is ilqa, which means inspiration, but so does wahi. But just to make it a level playing field, we don't want to offend technicians. So we say ilqa. So ilqa, you are all, every one of you. And the thing is, you don't actually know when something has been revealed to you. You actually don't know when something has been revealed to you. And if it has been revealed to you, you don't know how to verify whether it's true. Or you don't know whether it's true in the first place. Forget verifying it, you don't know. For example, the Prophet ﷺ has said that your experience when you go to sleep, if you divide that into 46 parts, or one of those 46 parts is wahi. There's a hadith on that. Or the other alternative could be that every 46 visions you have, one is true. But who's going to sit with you now and say, right, let's dissect your dream or your vision at night and let's, to put it into 46 parts and let's see which one is wahi. But one of those limbs of what you have seen is wahi. And now which one is wahi? You don't know. But the more you try to understand this, the more you'll understand what's going on inside you. Because ultimately this is all about you. This isn't about me giving you, hairy-fairy facts and figures and you thinking, oh right, well that's nice, we're loaded with more facts and figures. This session isn't about facts and figures. It's about understanding this book and how it applies to all of you as humans. Because the manufacturer is ultimately giving this example for you. This
talk of angels and what's happening, this, if someone, lectured you and started telling you stories, in the modern day, especially with the social media day, we say, listen, cut the jackanory, just get to the point. I don't want the jackanory, just what's your point? Because of course that's what TikTok has turned us into. We haven't got concentration spans. We haven't got time for stories or for examples or for proverbs. But our manufacturer understands that it is our need for us to not have facts and figures always thrown at us, because that can be quite tedious. I mean, imagine someone saying to you, here's a book of rules, digest it. But sometimes it's easier, and this is what the manufacturer requires, sometimes it's easier to give an example and you ponder over that example and you extract from that. That's exactly what's going on here. You are given an example. Remember, the discourse was about you. It was about humans, your reality. Now he's saying, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. So the fifth source is wahi. We have wahi. Of course, the wahi we have is not the same as the wahi prophets have. It's a different form of wahi. It's a totally different ballgame. We'll talk about that at the correct time. However, this verse talks about the word allama and bahut ilm padha, and we did with great emphasis grant knowledge. When Allah Azza wa Jal, so this knowledge is direct knowledge. It's not via, it's direct knowledge. And knowledge from Allah comes in three ways to prophets, because we're talking about prophets here. But it's relevant for us because ultimately there are those who have received knowledge in this way from Allah in a formal, legal way, but there are those who also have received knowledge from Allah in an informal way through the same channels. But scholars are very shy to talk about that because there's a lot of Sufis who will abuse this. So what they say is, just brush that under the carpet, don't even talk about it. But the reality is that there have been people, ulama of tasawwuf, who have talked about this and who have actually elaborated on this. So وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, and we gave Adam knowledge. So knowledge given to Adam alayhi salam, which one of the three forms is it? We have established this far. Allama, hamne diya, we gave, Allah gave. We're happy with that so far. Allah Azza wa Jal says in another verse of the Quran, Ma kana li basharin, it is not for a man an yukallimahu Allah, to talk to Allah, illa except wahiyan aw min wara'il hijab aw yursila rasul. The Quran itself talks about how Allah communicates with His prophets. So naturally that communication would have to be the modus through which knowledge would have been given. Everyone follow? Yeah. Please don't be distracted. You must follow to the truth. This is a very delicate content. The knowledge given by Allah comes through three forms to prophets. And I've just said that non-prophets also receive it, but in an informal manner. Three forms of knowledge. Three moduses of knowledge. One, wahi. Wahi comes directly from Allah. No third person, no angel, no third entity in between. Direct. Allah to Prophet. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ used to talk about that in his own terminology. He said, when I used to receive wahi directly, it was like ringing bells. Very arduous upon me. But nevertheless, he received wahi. And if that wahi was sent directly to anyone other than prophets, Allah says in the Quran, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل, if we reveal this Quran, which is wahi, upon a mountain, لرأيته خاشية متصديا من خشية الله, this would explode through the khashiyat of Allah. So no a living entity can sustain wahi other than prophets. No living entity can sustain this kind of wahi other than prophets. Of course, we've already established that non-prophets also have wahi, although we don't use the word wahi just for ease. We don't want to get it confused, So we say, neatly, we say ilqa. But the Quran doesn't make that distinction. The Quran says, is awhayna ila ummika ma yuha. We revealed on the mother of Moses whatever we revealed. And it wasn't, she wasn't a prophet. And likewise, the bumblebee was the subject of wahi in the Quran. So, the first form of wahi, a modus of wahi, giving knowledge is through wahi. That's the first form. إِلَّا وَحِيًّا أَوْ مِنْ وَرَاءِ الْحِجَابِ, or behind a curtain. So, this example is one of Musa alayhi salam, where he spoke to Allah, and knowledge was given to Allah, but he did not see Allah. Although he did request, in all fairness, to see Allah. But min wara'il hijab. There's a question here which I hope you will keep at the back of your mind, because I can't really elaborate on it now, otherwise I will go on a voyage of discovery. Oh, min wara'il hijab. What did Kalimullah hear? Audibility wise, what did he hear? Did he hear the voice of Allah? What did he hear? There was clearly a voice. And the amazing thing was, those around him did not hear this voice. Those under the mountain did not hear the voice. No one except for his exclusive ears. And Allah says, Minhum man kallama Allah. There were amongst the prophets who had kalam with Allah. But kalam, talking, min wara'il hijab, behind a curtain. So they can't see. And of course you can now appreciate why, having talked behind a curtain, Musa alayhi salam reached a stage where he said, come on, Rabbi arini anzur ilayka, oh Allah, the Quran says, oh Allah, I want to see you. That's a natural, probable consequence of interaction. Oh Allah, I want to see you. And Allah didn't say no, although Allah did give the caveat, lan tarani. And lan tarani is translated by most mufassirin to mean, you cannot see me. There's only two options, isn't there? I cannot show you me, or you cannot see me. But there's a third possibility, and I don't want to go into that, because that then goes on another voyage of discovery. Sometimes, all translators have translated. You pick up any translation, lan tarani. Tu hargiz mujhe nahi dekh sakta. Sorry, I'm using this Urdu because English is a very dry language. It doesn't have the same emphasis. We say, tu nahi mujhe dekh sakta. That's fine, you can't see me. But when someone says in Urdu, hargiz tu mujhe nahi dekh sakta, there's an emphasis in that, isn't there? Now, if you go to someone who speaks English and say, indeed you cannot see me, says, mate, why are you saying indeed? You can't see me, fine. Mission accomplished. Why do you need to use the word indeed? So, lan tarani is a very sensitive word which has grammatical sensitivities. Hargiz nahi dekh sakta mujhe. But most translators have translated, oh Musa, you cannot see me. It's not that I can't show you myself, but you cannot see me. But there's a third possibility in this which Mufassirin haven't talked about. And that isn't you can't see me or I can't show you. It's that I can show you and you can see me, but I don't want you to see me. And this explanation, tafsir, was done, the first person to do this was Qazi Ayyaz, 900 years ago in his book Ash-Shifa bi Huquq al-Mustafa. And he says, Qazi Ayyaz, what a amazing, he was a judge, Maliki fiqh. He says, Kalimullah was told, it's not that I can't show you or you can't see me. Both possibilities are there. But this seeing me, you have talked to me, no one up till now has talked to me. But this seeing me through the naked eye is reserved for my Muhammadur Rasulullah. And until he doesn't see me with his naked eye, you will never see me. there's a certain pyar in this. Hargiz nahi dekh sakta. It's like you cannot see me. There's no rule or no rigidity in this. It's a pyar. No, you cannot see. Hargiz nahi dekh sakta. And why? I have reserved this for the eyes. Once his eyes have seen me, then the door is open. Then no problem. Yeah, no problem. That's why I just want to call upon you, the memory of your knowledge and put a thread through it. You have heard, every one of you, I hope you've heard, the Sahih Hadith, إِنَّ اللَّهَ حَرَّمَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ أَن تَأْكُلَ أَجْسَادَ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ. Allah has made it haram. This is Sahih Hadith, Bukhari, Muslim. Allah has made it haram to touch the bodies of prophets. فَنَبِيُّ اللَّهِ حَيٌّ. The body of a prophet is alive. This is hadith. يَرْزُقُ. And it has rizq. Rizq applies to the body, not to the soul. The soul doesn't need rizq. Now, I'm just going to put a thread through this.
Haram for the earth.
It's just haram for the earth. To touch, like a mufti says, it is haram for you to do this, it is haram for you. But if you go to a mufti sahab and say, I want to, मैं एक बिल्ली के खिलाफ फतवा लेना चाहता हूँ. कमाल की बात है. बिल्ली fatwa. Billi, my fatwa doesn't apply to a billi. I can only give fatwas of haram and halal upon who I apply shariat. But you can see the Prophet ﷺ, it is haram for the earth. Yani, I know what is halal for the earth, I know what is haram for the earth, because I am the Nabi of the earth. Inna Allaha harrama alal ardi. It is haram upon the earth and ta'kula ajsad al-anbiya, to touch the body of a prophet. Now let's just put a thread through this and carry on. So on this Sahih Hadith, I ask you this question: is Musa alayhi salam in his body physically alive? Not like us, but is he physically sustained? He is. Everyone happy? There's no degradation of his body. Everyone happy with that? Why? Because inna Allah harrama ala, Allah has made it haram upon the earth. So I ask you this question: when Musa alayhi salam rises on the day of judgment from his grave, will that be a different body or will it be the same body? Same body. So here Allah is saying, Tu mujhe nahi dekh sakta, you cannot see me. And ulama have gone on the train that you don't have the power to see me, and they use the istidlal that when Allah did his tajalla, faja'alahu dakkan wa kharra Musa sa'iqa, he fainted. And they said, there you are, there's the dalil. He couldn't sustain that tajalla of Allah, therefore he couldn't see him. But no, that was different. Here, and Allah didn't refuse him that, no, sorry, you can't see me. Allah still manifested his tajalla, but Musa alayhi salam fainted. The question I ask you is, when Musa alayhi salam rises, will his eyes be the same that were in his grave? Will his eyes be the same that were in Kohetur? Any difference? Not 2.75? Same? 20/20 vision, same one. On the day of judgment, Anbiya will see Allah. So how is it that he cannot see him here on Kohetur, but he sees him with the same eyes on the day of judgment? It means Lantarani doesn't mean you cannot see me, or you don't have the faculty to see me. It means that you can see me, but I will not allow you to see me until the one who should see me first sees me. And when his door opens, then anyone can see me. That's why the people of Jannah will also see Allah. Kama sha'nu, according to his shan. Right. So after that voyage of discovery, let's come back. So when Allah Azza wa Jal, the first modus of communication is a wahi. No third party involved. Direct. Min wara'il hijab, through a curtain. Min wara'il hijab. Second. And then the third possibility of transmission of knowledge for a prophet is O yursila rasul, where a messenger comes and gives news from Allah. A messenger refers to angels. So an angel comes and says, this is what Allah has said. Fine. So let's apply that here on وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. And we indeed, I'm sorry I'm going to use this, I didn't care about the English language. And we indeed gave an immense amount of knowledge to Adam alayhi salam. Now which one of these is it? Is it, oh sorry, I'm going to add a third, because I know some people may ask, certainly online. And recently there was a confusion about this. There is another knowledge which comes from Allah, which is referred to in the Quran, which is called ilm ladunni. Have you heard of this? Ilm ladunni. So in the 15th para, where Musa alayhi salam, I'm not going to repeat the story, where Musa alayhi salam converges with Khizr alayhi salam. It's a long story, we'll come on to it in the proper time. So Musa alayhi salam is told that despite the fact that you are an ulil azam, if you allow me to use this term, creme de la creme of prophets. You are creme de la creme, ulul azam. There are no better prophets than the ones that are ulul azam. But despite being an ulul azam prophet, there is someone who has knowledge which you don't have. Musa alayhi salam says, really? And Allah says, go and find him. I'm not going to send him to you, find him. Why? I want to establish that this knowledge which I'm talking about, it doesn't come to you. You have to find it. And it's not something that you can find at university or college. So Allah sent Musa alayhi salam and Hazrat Yusha bin Nun, another prophet, to go and find Khizr. I mean, why not just cut the chase and just tell him where his, statistics are, his geolocation is? I mean, but no, persevere. Go and find him. I'm not going to repeat the story. Persevere. Surah Kahf, it's all there. So they went on a journey, and they packed their bag. They had a proper, picnic. You prepare for a journey. They prepared food. Anyway, eventually, I'm not going to repeat the whole story, but eventually they found, and the Quran takes a picture, snapshot of that. فَوَجَدَا phir dhunda. They found. فَوَجَدَا وَجَدَ يَجِدُ إِجَادًا phir dhunda. And they found what? عَبْدًا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. A servant from amongst our servants. Look at the casual nature of this. A servant from amongst our servants. But what was his speciality? This is his CV. Khizr Islam CV. آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً مِّنْ عِنْدِنَا. We gave him some rahmat from us. Min, this word min is some, not a lot. Some. If you allow me to use technical grammatical languages, min tab'iziyah. Some rahmat from us. Kuch rahmat di. Ataynahu rahmatan min ind. Please don't look here, because the thread of concentration then goes. Min indina. And then وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ, and the same emphasis, allama. وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ, फिर हमने उसको बहुत ढेर सा इल्म दिया. क्या? وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. अपनी तरफ से इल्म दिया. From ourselves. So people think that this ilm ladunni is different to wahi. Because Khizr alayhi salam, one of the observations he said to Musa alayhi salam is, I have knowledge which you don't have, but you have knowledge which I don't have. But Musa alayhi salam didn't come to hear this statement. He assumed that I am the ulul azam, top brass prophet. Who has more knowledge than me in my time? And then Allah says, no, there is someone who has knowledge which even you don't have. And then Musa alayhi salam comes. Look at the tone of Musa alayhi salam. Such sweetness. قال له موسى هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا. Is it possible that you can give me some of that knowledge that you have? The world we live in, before we acquire knowledge, our credentials are appraised. So a person who has done 11 in the metric, 11 metric? Or who's done metric back home, comes to university here and says, "Janaab, maine metric pass ki hai," they say, "Sorry, you don't meet our entry requirements. You don't meet our entry requirements." So in the world we live, before you are given knowledge, you have to come up to entry requirements. Khizr alayhi salam is talking to he's not junior, he's senior. You have to remember, this is a very serious affair. He's talking to his senior, and his answer, look how his answer is. He says, "O Musa, the knowledge which you have come to gain from me, that knowledge tells me you cannot sustain that knowledge." That is a huge. إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. I'm sorry, you don't have it in you. If someone said that to you, you would be quite offended. Certainly off your Christmas card list. I mean, that's quite offensive. You don't have the facility to even understand the knowledge I have. So we need to understand ilm ladunni, what it is, but not for the purposes of now. Ilm ladunni is a strand of wahi, but it's not exactly the same as wahi. Whereas with wahi, a prophet is told, this person is a person of Jahannam, or this person is X, or this person is Y. A factual scenario is given. That's wahi. But ilm ladunni is a far more complex knowledge, again directly from Allah. The same terminology is وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. And yet, the funny thing is, I'm so sorry if I'm going to slightly go on a different track here. Look at the two limbs of this verse. We gave him some rahmah. Who? Who did we give some rahmah to? Khizr. And we gave him ilm ladunni. And despite giving him ilm ladunni, he actually said to Musa alayhi salam, I have what you don't have, you have what I don't have. So he conceded the incompleteness of his knowledge. But when it came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how much rahmah did he have? The Quran depicts his rahmah to say, no. Forget about how much rahmah you have. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةٌ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. My beloved, you are the rahmah for the whole of the alameen. So the talib of Khizr has some rahmah, and Rasulullah, Habibullah has rahmah which he distributes in the whole universe. But then it doesn't end there. He says, وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. And we gave him knowledge which Musa alayhi salam didn't have. But then he didn't have knowledge which Musa alayhi salam had. But when it came to the knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as I said to you in the concluding remarks last week, علمك ما لم تكن تعلم. اے محبوب سب کچھ ہو سکھا دیا جو نہیں جانتے. So much so, when we use the word sab kuch, this is, you can't exaggerate with this. When a teacher says, मैं सब कुछ पढ़ा दूंगा, it doesn't mean I will teach you everything. It means what is my speciality, subject to my speciality. But when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam advertised his knowledge on the mimbar, he didn't say, I will tell you what is shariat, I will tell you what is tariqat or haqiqat or marifat. He didn't limit his knowledge. Look at the veracity of his offer. From the offer you can gauge the author, how immense he is. You can gauge from his offer how immense the author is. He stands on the mimbar and he says, Saluni amma shi'tum. Ask any question you want from me. There is no question which my knowledge cannot answer. Now, if I said this in this group, Saluni amma shi'tum, ask me any question. If someone said to me, can you tell me a technical question in chemical engineering? I will say, excuse me. Ask me anything refers to Quran and Sunnah. Why chemical engineering? That's not my field. But the questioner, the author, didn't limit himself to a particular area. He stood up and he said on the mimbar, Saluni amma shi'tum. Ask me whatever you like. There's no limitation on this. And he said it with Jalal, by the way. Saluni 3 times. Saluni amma. Because the munafiqs were there, so just to rub it in. Saluni amma shi'tum. Saluni amma shi'tum. Ask me anything you like. No one stood up. Why? Because before that speech, He had already delivered a speech and given them so much knowledge. I'm not going to talk about that. And one person stood up. He didn't ask a question of wuzu. He didn't ask a question of fiqh. He didn't ask a question of haqiqat or shariat. He stood up and he said, "Who's my dad?" I mean, come on, you go to a masjid and the imam says, "Ask me anything." And he says, one person stands and says, "Who's my dad?" I mean, that's quite a serious question, isn't it? The imam will say, "Are you insinuating something?" I mean, what a question. This is a DNA question. Who's my dad? The Prophet ﷺ didn't say, no, this is not something for my domain. Let me ask Jibreel. As soon as he asked the question, as soon as the question finished, the Prophet ﷺ gave him the answer. This is your father. Paternity, I would like to ask you this question. Is paternity a knowledge of the zahir or of the batin? External knowledge or internal knowledge? I mean, you can't look at someone and say this is his son. Certainly not in a court of law. So in a court of law, to prove paternity, what do you need? DNA. Is DNA an external knowledge or internal knowledge? If it's an internal knowledge, which science has just now fathomed, the Prophet ﷺ, 1400 years, they say, I can see DNA. This is your father. Internal. So allama, this is the veracity of the knowledge of the Prophet ﷺ. But now we're talking about Adam ﷺ. We gave him knowledge, allama. So let's come back to those three. How did he give it? Did he give it through an angel, or behind the curtain, or directly? Directly. You see, when you use that word, there's a lot in that word. And this is an explosion that's about to happen. Allah Azza wa Jal directly, no third party, no hearing, no eavesdropping, direct, gave knowledge. What was that knowledge that he gave? Asma'a kullaha. If you allow me to just give you a grammatical insight in this, the word kullaha, everything, is preceded by alif lam of al-asma. And this alif lam, al-asma, sometimes comes in four ways. I don't want to tie you down to grammar. But this alif lam is alif lam istighraqi. And it means there is no name of anything that existed where? That time? Where? Name of what? This is a serious question. What did he teach him? Name of what? What everything? At that time of the past, present or future? All time. And where was that knowledge? Lawh Mahfuz. Remember the word فَعَلَّمَ الْقَلَمِ, and he gave knowledge to the qalam. And so therefore, he gave knowledge of everything, every name, past, present and future, to Adam alayhi salam. Directly. Wahi does not require prerequisite intellectual capacity. You don't have to produce your CV for wahi. It's given, it's there, done. We live in an age where we are able to understand the transfer of data. 100 years ago, people didn't understand this. How can knowledge, data, be transferred from one entity to another? That's not possible. But science has taught us, through the benefit of technology, that you can transmit data from one entity into another. Once upon a time it was through wires, and now it's wireless, depending on your connection. So this is if you allow me to use this terminology, a wireless connection between Allah and Adam alayhi salam, where knowledge is directly transmitted of everything. What knowledge? Of everything. There's no exclusions in this. And the people of tafsir, especially the eminent people of tafsir, they say that this knowledge was not limited. It not only had the names, like for example table, he was taught the reality of that knowledge. the reality of that knowledge, the reality of that name. So Adam alayhi salam was taught, there was a transmission of data. Now, I'm very sorry, and I'm saying sorry beforehand, so in case someone has a problem later. The last thing you want to hear anyone doing tafsir is quote Hollywood. But I'm going to quote Hollywood today. I'm very sorry. Because it's hardly a reference point, is it? But no, Hollywood movies, you mustn't take them lightly. I mean, you just sit down and relax and eat popcorn thinking it's just entertainment. But you are being educated in these movies without realizing how you're being groomed. I'm sorry to use that word. You are being groomed in a way. I mean, look, you go to any elder now and say, what do you think of jadoo, sihr? I say, astaghfirullah. Ye baat hai puchne wali? Jadoo, sihr. But you go to any child and say, witchcraft and sorcery, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Harry Potter. Oh yes, fun and games. So do you see how they have fashioned the mind of a child? Neutralized it. So Hollywood movies, there's 3 lobbies that control Hollywood. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be telling you this in the Tafsir al-Quran. But it's very relevant. Next time you watch a movie, and don't pretend you don't. Next time you watch a movie, you have to ask yourself, who made this movie? Which of the 3 groups made this movie? The most dominant group that makes movies, no, let me start from the small boys. There is a group that sponsors movie, and that's the Christian lobby. So any movie that you see that promotes morals and promotes religious values, you know it's made by the Christian lobby. Right? The second lobby that sponsors films is the Jewish lobby. Again, they are implanting their values without formally saying it. It's like Indian films for the last 40 years, under the guise of a story, they would implant Hindu worship. So the viewer is forced to see those actors who he's seeing not for the purpose of worship, but he's seeing them worship. It's a way to neutralize the mind to say this is normal. It's like in the 1960s, Muslims wouldn't even walk past a pub. They would walk on the other side of the road. They say, Toba, Toba. I'm not even walk past the pub. Now, people go into pubs and they're saying, there's no problem. My iman is not affected. So you see the threshold changes. Anyway, so the second group that has movies, and you have to really think carefully, is this made by the Jewish lobby or the Christian lobby? The common denominator between the Christian lobby and the Jewish lobby is that they have morals in their films. So films which you have you see morals in, or which you see theology, strands of theology in it, in a very masked way, it's either Christian or Jewish. But the biggest group that controls Hollywood and makes movies is the Freemasonic group. And their movies, I have to say on the record, are masterpieces. Why? Because they give you their content without you realizing that you are buying into their content. So once upon a time, look, in the 1960s, if they had a film with mobile phones, what would that film be classified as? Science fiction. So what was science fiction today? No longer science fiction. So this is just a term to tame us. This is science fiction, this is reality. But the reality is that every movie, and 90% of movies that emanate from Hollywood are sponsored by the Freeman. And there is so much research behind it. For goodness sake, if you don't believe me, I delivered a lecture at the University of Westminster once, and there was a guy sat next to me. He was a professor who taught a degree at University of Manchester in what subject? Potterology. BA in potterology. And I thought, who bloody wastes 3 years studying Harry bloody Potter? I mean, come on. But there's a lot at stake there. Lord of the Rings. These aren't just someone who sat there and said, let me just make a fun film. No. There is so much thinking behind that. Rings, look, Lord of the Rings. This is... So what the Freemasonic lobby through their films are showing is we know certain knowledges. And they know certain knowledges because Shaitan gives them that knowledge. So they advertise that knowledge, sometimes in the name of science fiction and sometimes otherwise. But what I'm about to refer to for the purpose of this verse is a film which I confess I have seen, but I believe that that film provides insight to what the Quran has already talked about. But it shows you how much our adversary knows the technicalities involved. The name of that film, I don't know if anyone of you have seen it, it's called Lucy. Anyone seen it?
Yeah.
If you haven't, must see it. Why? On the face of it, it's a science fiction film. But the essence of that film is absolutely correct. Why? Because it starts off by Morgan Freeman talking about the human brain. That the human brain functions, we use the human brain, how many percentage? Huh? Oh, give or take which part of the world you are living in. What's the maximum? 10? 10, 12. With all this advancement we have in technology, we are still using this nut at only 10%. Or give or take. Depending on the location of this nut. Anyway, so what that film says, which is absolutely correct, that the more you use this brain, the more powerful you become. In not only knowledge, it's not about just knowing what's in this book, the content of this book. I still remember, 25 years ago, a 3-year-old child came to Hijaz for a PhD. Was anyone here who was there at the time? I mean, when the Iranian ambassador called and said, "I would like to come to Hijaz and to get a PhD," I said, "Oh, really? Who's the candidate?" So yes, he's a 3-year-old boy. Yeah. And I was in London at that time with my London accent. Are you taking a minute, mate? Come on. Well, actually, I didn't say that. It is a 3-year-old boy. We went PhD for 3-year-old boy. 3-year-old boy? I said, I thought he was actually pranking me. I thought, so what's his name? He says, Sayyid Ahmad Tabatabai. And this is the Iranian ambassador. I said, okay, so what would you like? He goes, I'd like you to have 12 ulama from different disciplines question him on your... I thought, what a bloody farce. 3-year-old child? The day came, and it's all on the internet, you can see it. 3-year-old child comes with his toys and his mum. And he sat there. 11 ulama are asking him questions about the Quran and Sunnah. And he's just blurting it out. 3. And then after an hour he says, "Can I have a break?" I said, "Why?" He says, "I want to play with my toys." This is not Mickey Mouse, or this is not, comical or something that I'm making up. This is something... 3-year-old boy. And he's answering. You name any verse, he'll tell you. Name any word, he'll tell you from the Quran where it is. Name any hadith, he'll tell you. So he is a national treasure of Iran. Anyway, we couldn't fathom that he didn't get one thing wrong. And the way he used to blurt it out was as if, like a child blurts it out. No big deal. There was no strain on him. And in the end, we did give him a PhD. We had to give him a PhD from him. And then a few years later, a 9-year-old girl, Ruqayya, her name was, exactly the same thing. So how do you explain that? That a child was able to retain so much, easy peasy. It's all about how much brain is used. But the essence of that, Lucy, is actually a very interesting end. Where when you start going beyond 60-70%, it's not just about knowing this knowledge, it's about manipulating this knowledge. And when you get to a stage of manipulation of knowledge, that's when they say knowledge is power. Then you use knowledge as power. Once you have knowledge at a certain realm, Like Sarkar Ghaus Pak says, وَلَوْ أَلْقَيْتُ سِرِّي فَوْقَ مَيْتٍ. And if I told my knowledge to the dead body, لَقَامَ بِقُدْرَةِ الْمَوْلَى تَعَالِي. Through that knowledge, even the dead body would rise. That's knowledge. Knowledge isn't just learning a few lines and saying, I'm an alim. Or rehearsing a few hadiths and saying, I'm an alim. Knowledge has an end. And the end of knowledge isn't quantity. It's what you do with that knowledge. So, here we are being told that Adam alayhi salam was given knowledge, and I would like to now say, having advertised Lucy, that Adam alayhi salam's brain was at 100% at this time. 100%. This is لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. We made the human in the best of forms. This is the best of form. Yes?
The film that you mentioned, what's the reason for making the film then? If you're saying it's made by movies, what message are they trying to...
They are showing that we know of this knowledge. Like we have in the awliya, I've talked about Aghyas, Aqtab, Ahbab. You have a hierarchy called the Intizamiya. They made a film on that. I don't know the name of that film.
Adjustment Bureau.
Adjustment Bureau. I was like, oh my God. This whole Adjustment Bureau is based on the Intizamiya. Ultimately, the knowledge which Freemasons have in the higher degrees, 7-up. You have to be 7-up. Not drink 7-up. You have to be 7-up. Oh yes, not down, 7-up. Once you're 7-up, you get direct knowledge from Shaitan. And Shaitan has this knowledge. It's not, rock is... But they are showing, even Lord of the Rings, I have to confess, is one of my most favorite films. It is, packed with so much content that we actually don't realize. Ring, Lord, I could do a whole hours lecture on how much content has been taken from the Quran and Sunnah. And the ring has power. Sulaiman alayhi salam confiscated jewelry which embodied power, evil power, and he put it under his chair. And that's why they want to find the Temple of Solomon, to find that chair, to find that jewelry, to find the ring, to find the bangles. That's a different story for a different day. So, 100%, he was at 100%. The perfect being, 100%. And he was there. Data was transmitted to him. Data was transmitted to him, to his mind. You have to look at this very carefully. He's at 100%. At 100%, he's not just a data center. For prophets, knowledge has 3 dimensions. One is the data element, X, Y, Z, and one is hikmah. لَمَا آتَيْتُكُم مِّن كِتَابٍ وَحِكْمَةٍ. I will give you the book and hikmah and wisdom. Many people who have knowledge don't have wisdom in the world we live. But then you have people who have wisdom who don't have knowledge. But then there's a third thing other than wisdom, and that's faqaha in Arabic. It's called faqahat, understanding. And understanding doesn't come from your own faculty. Allah Azza wa Jal gives you understanding. That's why he says in a hadith Qudsi, Sahih hadith Qudsi, مَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا. When Allah wants to do you a favor, He doesn't increase your bank balance. He doesn't increase your qualifications. What does He do? When Allah wants to do you a favor, Subhanallah, what does He do? مَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ. No, He doesn't give you knowledge. No, not knowledge. مَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. He gives you an understanding of deen. Understanding, faqahat. So you have many scholars today who are absolutely encyclopedias of knowledge, but there's no faqahat. You have people of tasawwuf who have wisdom, give or take, but they have no knowledge. That in itself is a curse. To practice faqr without knowledge. Baaj ilm kare faqiri te mar se kafir ban ke ho. If you practice faqr without knowledge, then you will die a kafir. Why? Shaitan will say, right, thank you very much. I know where to trap you. And that's why when Imam Ghazali was about to pass away, on the one hand was the angel of death, on the other hand was Shaitan. And Shaitan was saying, right, let's have a munazara. And Imam Ghazali thought, the angel of death is at my door, and you. But he said, yeah, it's fine. And within a few minutes of discussion with Shaitan overturned him and said, now, either you agree with me and die a kafir, don't answer me and die a munafiq, or answer me and die a mu'min. What did Imam Ghazali do at that juncture? A lifetime's worth of knowledge couldn't save him. Because ultimately, Quran says, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَظِيمٍ. And on top of every alim is another alim. And Shaitan is no ordinary alim. So here, you have to understand, Adam alayhi salam, 100%. Not just a data center. He has capacity to understand that knowledge, faqahat of that knowledge. That's why, I'm giving you an example of his knowledge. When the souls were taken out, Adam alayhi salam was individually introduced. Not introduced, but individually met every son and daughter of his. Name by name. You didn't have to say, my name is X, Y. No, I know your name. I'm your father. Every one of you. I know you. Anji. Everyone. You're like a father. Doesn't need introduction. And if a son or a child says, I am son, I am better, I'm not, I know who you are. I know better, I know who you are. But every one of you sat here was introduced to Adam alayhi salam. And then, when he encountered a particular child of his, he became overwhelmed. And his question was, Man huwa? Who is he? Did he not know? وَعَلَّمَ عَادَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Did he not know, or had he forgot? Sometimes you don't ask a question out of ignorance. Sometimes you ask a question, whoa, who is he? I know who he is, but I want to tell every one of you. Whoa, who is he? And he was told, this is your son Dawood alayhi salam. Yeah. To advertise Dawood alayhi salam, this is the Man huwa ya Rabbi, the words of the hadith. Man huwa ya, who is he? Qala ibnuka Dawood, he is your son Dawood. I'm not going to repeat that hadith. What I'm trying to say is, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah gave him the knowledge, yes.
If an alim has knowledge, how would he gain wisdom?
Sorry?
If an alim has knowledge, how does he gain wisdom?
See, that's a fantastic question. Wisdom cannot be gained from books. Wisdom comes directly from Allah. In fact, and wisdom is ladunni, directly from Allah. You know when I said in the beginning of my lecture that non-prophets can be the subject of wahi? Well, there you are, wisdom. In fact, someone asked Hazrat Shaykh Sadi, you have a lot of wisdom. Where did you get your wisdom from? He said, from idiots. He said, how do you work that out? He said, very simple, I lived amongst them. Whatever they did, I did the opposite. But wisdom is not something which you can go to university for. The only way to gain wisdom is to sit in the company of those who Allah has bestowed wisdom. And then through that company, Allah will, Jalaluddin Rumi says in his Masnavi, Yek zamana su'bate ba'awliya Behtar az sad sala ita'ate beriya. He says, one moment in the company of the people of Allah is better than 1,000 years of sajda. Why? Your sajda upon sajda upon sajda upon sajda could deliver you sausage. You get sawab. And the angel is still writing, don't worry. Come on there, no problem. But in real terms, sajda upon sajda, sajda upon sajda, hajabi pe daage sajda, zara dil bhi dekh zahid, jo jagah hai roshani ki, wahi roshani nahi hai. Sajda pe sajda. So Jalaluddin Rumi said, Yek zamana, just one moment, Su'bate ba'awliya, in the company of those people of wisdom, is better than 1,000 years of sajda. Because that one moment could open a door for you which 1,000 years of sajda wouldn't open.
How would you define wisdom?
So wisdom is an understanding. The difference between wisdom and faqahat is that faqahat is something that I deduce through knowledge. But wisdom is something that I deduce through logic. It doesn't require knowledge for me to quote knowledge. That's why wisdom is not the monopoly of ulama. Scholars, they would love to say that it is their monopoly, but unfortunately it isn't. That's why you find, I have seen ulama who are catalogues of knowledge, but they have no wisdom. They have absolutely no wisdom. They are like, for them knowledge is like a commodity. They'll sell it, they'll do whatever they do with it. It's a sword for them. But actually knowledge is light, it takes you to a direction. But wisdom is an understanding which comes from Allah, which gives you a logical framework to doing X, Y and Z. Whereas faqahat is also the same thing, but the difference with faqahat is that you will tally whatever you have arrived at in a conclusion back to knowledge. That's why there are people who walked this earth who had no knowledge, but had so much wisdom that wisdom prevailed over knowledge. There are many awliya I can quote who actually had no formal knowledge, but they had so much wisdom that wisdom prevailed over the knowledge. So, a prophet's knowledge is data, wisdom, and faqahat. Adam a.s. is at optimum, 100%. Data has been transferred into his memory bank. We now realize in the world that we live that data, I don't know if you recall, in the 60s, 70s, data centers were huge machineries. Now, what was in a room this size is in a small USB. So as science progresses, it is realizing that data can be compressed. So when Adam a.s. is given knowledge, how can a mind or brain this size accommodate so much knowledge? Now this is the thing. If I say we're going to have a competition of tug of war, you know what tug of war is? Tug of war. Between one person and 50 people. No matter how powerful that one person is, I think you will agree that my offer of 1 to 50 qualifies me for help under the NHS scheme of mental problems. Whether I'm a section 2 or section 3, ultimately my destiny is section 10. I will find myself under the auspices of those authorities. Why? Because it defies logic how one person can compete against the strength of 50. Or let's put another zero on top of that. 500. I mean, that's the madness just carries on, doesn't it? Now, we are being told in the Quran, O human, at 100%, this is what you had to go through. This is what one of you had to go through. By the way, Adam a.s. hadn't pronounced his prophethood at this moment. So we're not talking about the power of prophethood. That's a different species. We're talking about the power of a human. Every one of you has that power. At 100%, Allah said, right, we're going to have a competition. Yeah. O angels, you say that you are worthy of being my Khalifa. And why this? I'm going to show you that the supremacy of the human being is based on knowledge. But not knowledge of ratta, not knowledge of what does that do? Nothing. Knowledge is just data. But the idea of a competition sounds good because Allah has given knowledge to Adam alayhi salam, but if you look at the statistics, it's absolutely mind-boggling. Who are the contenders? And in the left corner you have one man, Adam alayhi salam. And in the right corner you have the entire population of the angels. Not one, not two, not five, the entire, I mean there is no number which we have in our dictionary that can describe the quantity of angels. I mean, what's the highest number we have? Is it trillion, zillion? Zillion. I don't think there's a number after zillion, is there? Huh? So, we are faced with a quantity which is over a zillion. In fact, we have no knowledge of how much it is. And in the right corner you have a zillion plus. And who's the left corner? One man. This is amazing. So here you have quantity overwhelming, but then you have knowledge. The knowledge of that quantity is being challenged to the knowledge of this one. Do bear in mind who gave the angels their knowledge in the first place. There's no university for angels. Because the angels, at the end of this, in the next verse, just to skip a bit, they say, La ilma lana illa ma allamtana. Oh Allah, we have no knowledge except that which you have given us. So you have a zillion plus who've graduated from the University of Allah. Allah has given them knowledge. But here, you have another person who's also graduated from the University of Allah. I bet you've never heard that term before. Allah giving direct knowledge, and Allah saying let's have a competition. And you know, when I read this, I sometimes laugh. And I'll tell you why I laugh. Because the competition was between angels and this one human. And what happened? Allah said, ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ. Then Allah displayed every facet in front of the angels and said, أَنْبِئُونِي. Tell me the name. بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Tell me the names of all of this if you are truthful. And they said, قَالُوا سُبْحَانَكَ لَا عِلْمَ. Look at the sincerity and humility of this verse. قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا. Oh Allah, we only know what you have taught us. Look how much humility there is. But when I read this, I sometimes laugh. And I said, वो जो ज़लील था, वो जो खबीस था, who said, أنا خير من, I'm better than him. Where was he? He could have stuck his head out and said, no, I'm better than him. I'll have a go. You know, even though most of the goes you have in Blackpool, they're destined that you will fail. It's just a money-making scam. I'll have a go. I'll have a go. No. Where was Azazil at that time, who had made the proclamation, I am better than him? Even he couldn't come forward. Why? Because he says no. He understood. Allama Adama. हमने बहुत पढ़ाया, खूब पढ़ाया, इंतहा दर्जे का पढ़ाया. Look, the CV is Allama Adama, not just थोड़ा सा पढ़ा दिया. No, Allama Adama. Even Iblis didn't come forward and say, all right, let me. Halaki, at that juncture, he should have come forward because he claimed, I'm better. But even he accepted the ilmi supremacy of the human being. That when this human functions at 100%, even I can't touch him. Even I can't touch him. I can't come near him. On the other hand, you have angels who are of the caliber of, and I'm not going to go through the list, Mala'ul A'la, Jibreel, Mikail, Azrail, Asrafil. None of them accede to the challenge. Now you understand that share of Allama. Hamsaya Jibreel ami, Bandai Khaki. Yeah, Bandai Khaki. This, the status of Jibreel, Allah has given, Subhanallah. So, okay, let the competition begin. They didn't even come to the table. They didn't even have a bash at it. For us, in our world, we say, all right, let's have a try. even though I'm not going to make it. And it's almost like those games in Blackpool where they just rip you off with money. I'll have a try, maybe you'll come. They didn't even try. They didn't even try. Why? It was a foregone conclusion that a trillion, zillion angels do not have the same knowledge as one man. That is serious business. And that knowledge of Adam alayhi salam was transmitted into his progeny. So every one of you has that knowledge. But why can you not express that? Because we operate at 10%, give or take. We operate at 10%, yes.
You mentioned rote learning, but why is it that that's the predominant method used in the Muslim world, although in the Western world it doesn't move away from it?
You see, what has preserved is scholarly learning. You have scholarly learning. But learning and the higher echelons of learning weren't about you come, you seek, you persevere, you get qualifications. It's not about that. In this world, the idea of knowledge starts off with the fact that I am ignorant, I'm nothing. In the world that we live in, the scholarly world, it is, I have come to the university because I can read, write. I have prerequisites. But in that world, whether you can read or write is insignificant. What you are is, the starting point is I'm nothing. I have come to seek. The problem is, when your mindset is I am, then you can't seek anything from those who have. But if your mindset is that I'm nothing, but I want to have that higher knowledge, then when you sit in the company of such people, that knowledge is imparted. And how is that knowledge imparted? It's not a course, a short course that's done. What happens is that through the company, they say you are the company you keep. What happens is, what's that scientific? When you rub a magnet on another,
Magnetize.
When you rub shoulders with them, when you sit in their company, automatically the clogging that has taken place unclogs. Yeah. That's why I always give the example of the gentleman who came to me after 7 years and said, I have had no progress, I went to the Shaykh and I would like to come to you now. And I said, really? Why? He said, I stayed with him for 7 years and all he made me do was wash dishes. And he said to me, well, I got nowhere with him. And it just so happened I actually knew who that gentleman was. And he was a gentleman of substance. I said, 7 years? Washing dishes? He said, I didn't get anywhere. For 7 years, every time I walked in, he would say, there's the kitchen. And he said, I was devastated. So I've come to you now. I think I need an upgrade. I said, really? Well, the problem is I've got a dishwasher. 7 years. Imam Ghazali, after 27 years of teaching and learning, do you know what he did? He gave up his job. He had thousands of disciples, thousands of students, the top Shaykh al-Hadith, top brass ulama, all his students. After 27 years of knowledge, chucked all his books away. And what did he go and do? What would you do after 27 years of knowledge? If you want to upgrade yourself. You know what his job role was? What his CV was? Latest? He's a cleaner in a masjid. A cleaner in a masjid? Someone asked him, sir, 27 years of learning and teaching, you're a cleaner in a masjid. How does that work? He said, well, I couldn't find him through my mind, but I know there's a heart. I don't know anything of this heart. All I know, this heart is a very clogged up, dirty, dark place. So I thought I'd do a contract with him. I'll clean your house, you clean my house. became a cleaner. I'll clean your house, you clean my house. So the great Ghazali of his time was a cleaner in the masjid. And they didn't have hoovers in that, vacuums in those times. I mean, even at that time, even now, we look down at cleaners, we think, oh, cleaner? It is like professor at, Cambridge University becomes cleaner. It just doesn't add up. Why would you downgrade? We view it as a downgrade. And then one day, after a few months of him doing his cleaning job, very sincerely, a faqir came up to him and said, what are you doing? He said, I'm cleaning. I said, I've heard your spiel. What is this? He said, I'm cleaning his house. He goes, have you not heard Allah has said in the Quran, وَمَن يُضْلِلْ فَلَن تَجِدَ لَهُ وَلِيًّا مُرْشِدًا. When we misguide someone, he can't find a wali or murshid. So you think you can interact with him directly like this? Imam Ghazali thought, oh yeah. After all, with every institution there is a teacher. So if I want to, Allah karne se Allah na mile, Allah wale Allah se mila dete hain. So then he thought, oh, let me find someone who can take me there, who can introduce me. So he went to this dervish who was sat in a small, very small room, broken windows, broken everything. And he said to him, sir, I present myself to you. I have nothing to offer you, but 27 years of knowledge hasn't taken me anywhere. It's just a thing on my CV. It means nothing to me. I haven't found him. I want him. He's my la maqsood illallah. I want him. I want to experience the higher echelons of knowledge. And the person looked at him and said, you're Ghazali, you're a great alim. There's no place for you here. He said, no, please, sir. Don't throw me away. He said, no, look, we're a very simple setup. There's no place for you here. Go. Said, please. He said, oh, okay then. All right then. I'm telling you, this place isn't really suitable for you. You're a great alim. But if you want to stay here, I'll give you a chance. Your job is to, the people who come out to visit me, polish their shoes. Polish their shoes. Imam Ghazali, the great Ghazali, 27 years of knowledge, having written Ihya al-Ulum, is putting shoes straight, polishing shoes of commoners. And people are walking past. A time comes when people even forget Ghazali. Because like now, news and figures go out of fashion. The great Ghazali sat there polishing shoes. So one day 3 ulama were walking past, and they were, we heard there's a Shaykh here, let's just check him out. Let's just see what kind of a person he is. So they walked in, and they came and sat down, and they drafted 40 questions of knowledge. And they presented it to him. So, sir, can you answer these questions? We are students of knowledge. Now he knew that they didn't come to progress knowledge, they came to test him. So the first question was the most simple question, and in order, ascending order, they were, descending order, they were difficult as they went along. The 40th being the most difficult one. So he looked at the questions, he looked at them, looked at the questions and says, this is for an alim, I'm not an alim. Go, sorry, you've come to the wrong place. They said that we thought you were a shaykh, a murshid. They said, no, I'm not even wrong, you're wrong, I'm nothing, I'm just an ordinary person. So they had a proper laugh, they had a proper laugh with each other. Then we made a mockery of this guy. We basically caught him out. Because people refer to him as a murshid, as this. We caught him out. But he saw their state. So as they were putting their shoes on, Imam Ghazali was tying their shoelaces. And as they were laughing with each other, so Imam Ghazali said, why are you laughing? He said, friend, you're wasting your time here. This person has got no knowledge. What's he going to give you? He said, so, what were the questions? He said, the question here you are. They just as a mockery, here you are. He couldn't even answer these questions. Not even the first 2 he couldn't answer. Basic question. So Imam Ghazali looked at the questions, and from 1 to 40, within a few seconds he answered all the questions. They were shocked. If a person who attends to the shoes, if this is his knowledge, what must be the knowledge of the person? They ran back inside. Sir, we apologize. Sir, our mistake. They said, no, sorry, there's no place for you. You made a mistake here. This has been a total misunderstanding. There's no place for you here. No, but sir, they said, no, please go away. If there's anything I can do for you, food or accommodation, but I'm sorry, there's no place for you. So they left. Then the Murshid called Imam Ghazali. Janab, Aye, come, Ghazali, you answered the 40 questions? He said, indeed, sir. Why? He said, sir, they were mocking you. Sir, it was a question of your honor and respect. The Murshid said, Ghazali, since when have you been the custodian of my respect? कब से मेरी इज्जत का ठेका तुमने लिया? When were you the custodian? Innal izzata lillah. Izzat, it comes from قل اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل. Ghazali, who are you? It means you are a very great alim, isn't it? You consider yourself a great alim. So I told you there's no place for you. Now, rather than rewarding him, he's saying, sorry, there's no place for you here. This is the answer to your question. So Imam Ghazali said, oh, I made a mistake. I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. He said, no, I'm telling you, you're a great alim. There's no place for you here. He said, no. Sorry. There's no place for you. Please go. He says, give me one more chance, one last chance. He says, you have one last chance, but no longer in my territory. Go now in the market. There's a well there, and sit on the well, and every person, Muslim, non-Muslim, poor, rich, who comes past, offer them water from the well. Now you can imagine how, if you told a local alim of yours to go and distribute, pakode in town, you would hear some very colloquial French. Me? Distribute? And to non-Muslims? I can understand to Muslims, non-Muslims. So Imam Ghazali, the great Ghazali, sat on the well, all passers, sir, would you like water? Sir, would you like? Some people looked at him and they were quite embarrassed. This is the Ghazali. This is Al-Ghazali. He sat there. And it didn't bother him. He carried on. So after a few months of hard labor, sitting in the sun, no shade, no shades, giving water to people. Then, one day, the Murshid said to one of his friends, he said, that person sat on that well, I want you to creep up behind him. Make sure you are very careful. He shouldn't notice you coming. And I want you to kick him so hard that he falls in the well. Now these wells weren't health and safety checked, by the way, where if someone falls in, there's a fire escape or a ladder. Once you fall in a well, you are dead, as good as dead. If you don't die on the way down, you will drown. Anyway, so he said, you what? The person said to the Murshid, he said, you what? You know who that is? That's Ghazali. He said, I told you, just do what I told you, go and kick him. Kick him so hard, make sure he doesn't see you coming. Kick him so hard that he falls into the well. And then he says, and when he comes out, or jab wo nikle, and he knew that he will come out. So when he comes out, I want you to tell me what he does. Now you tell me, put yourself in that position. You're doing a civic duty. You're serving every passerby water or pakora, whatever you want to say, and someone comes and kicks you. Can you imagine your reaction? So this person does exactly what he is told. Imam Ghazali falls in the well, is injured in an immense way, but lo and behold, climbs himself back up, as forecasted. When he comes back up, contains himself, he touches the feet of the person and says, Aapko chot to nahi lagi? I hope you're not injured. Is your feet okay? That person was devastated. What have I done? He ran to the murshid. He said, "You're a criminal. You made me kick such a great alim." And the murshid said, "So what did he do?" He said, "He touched my feet." He said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Okay." Ghazali, come. He said, "Now you are ready." Now you are ready. Huh? Where you don't look at yourself, you look at others. That's the problem with ulama. They have knowledge, but they look at them. Their whole world revolves around themselves. What are people thinking of me? Let me tie my turban in a certain way so people think, "Oh, that looks nice." Let me wear this color jubba so people think, "Oh, very trendy." Let me wear this, and let me act like this. Ji khairiyat hai, mashallah. And otherwise, behind closed doors, totally different, demeanors. I call it, what is it called? Schizo personalities, in front, mashallah, and behind closed doors, totally different personality. So the problem is that scholarship only delivers qualification. This knowledge, to attain it, you need to be in the company of those, and that company mustn't be based on, I will assess my development. I will appraise my development.
And that begs the question, do we need scholarship?
Sorry?
Do we need scholarship?
No, scholarship is always needed in every time, because scholarship has a role. Do this, don't do this. Halal, haram. It has a role. But, one of the best films that I've actually seen is, I don't know if anyone of you have seen it, other than Ertugrul, it's Yusuf Emre. It's a judge, Qazi, who clashes, who crosses paths with the murshid, and he gives up his qaza, and that's it. His life changes. So, you see, to aspire to that level of knowledge, it's not about how much you sit. Of course, the more the merrier. But it's about the quality of that sitting. I remember my grandfather, alayhi rahmah, when he used to go to his murshid, he used to say, "Well, here's a spade. Let's go. Start digging." You've got an alim, one of the greatest ulama of his time, he's saying, "Here's a spade. Come on, let's go digging." You would make use of him in a far more optimum way in this day and age even. But there's a spade, let's go. But no, you see, there the objective wasn't, qualification, examination, protocols. There was so much simplicity, but in that simplicity, so much was imparted. There's a lot more to this, we'll talk about it more. So when Adam alayhi salam was given this knowledge, the angels didn't even have a go. They didn't even have a bash at this. And then they pleaded their humility, which is their shan, the greatness of angels, that they said, "No, we only know what you've taught us." But in this statement, they now have conceded that this man, this woman, knows something we don't know. Yeah, knows something we don't know. And then it didn't finish there. Allah didn't say, "Right, done, show's over." No, I'm going to show you. I want history to see that this man who you think is flesh and bones, blood, nothing, I want to show you. Then he says, قَالَ يَا آدَمْ, O Adam, أَنْبِئُهُمْ بِأَسْمَائِهِمْ. You now tell them the names. I want you to portray your knowledge. فَلَمَّا أَنْبَأَهُمْ. When he then, now how much time, if I say there will be a 7-hour lecture, I think most people will decide not to come. Because our concentration spans are very limited. Because that's what TikTok and social media has done to us, without us realizing, of course. But here, what is being imparted is a corpus of knowledge that we cannot fathom. But Adam alayhi salam is describing from the beginning of time to the end of time the knowledge of everything within a split second. It's not about time. The Prophet ﷺ also had this in his thing. The hadith says, Imam Baghawi, this is a Sahih hadith, many muhaddiseen bring this. قام رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فينا يوما بعد العصر. One day after Asr, the Prophet ﷺ stood up amongst us. After Asr. So here's a lecture. But look at this lecture from Asr till Maghrib. ما ترك شيء إلى يوم القيامة. He told us everything that was going to happen till the day of judgment. ما ترك شيء. He didn't miss out anything. Within how long is between the time of Asr to Maghrib? Give or take. Hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, depending which country you are. But where he was, alayhi salatu wassalam, 2-3 hours maximum. So within those few hours, he imparted so much knowledge. The hadith, words of the hadith are, Ma taraka shay'in ila yawm al-qiyamah, until hatta tatla' ash-shams ala atraf al-haytan, until the time of Maghrib came. Well, actually, I interpret this in a different way. The hadith says, until the sun came to the tops of the tree. تطلع الشمس على أطراف الحيتان. And this in Arabic is a sign of darkness, Maghrib. But I interpret this in a different way. That the sun comes to the tip of the trees. That, in my humble submission, and you don't have to agree with it, is the destroying of the ozone layer. Because what protects us from the sun's rays? The ozone layer. And today we see the erosion of the ozone layer through CFC gases. So the Prophet said, the hadith can be interpreted, he even gave this amount of detail. حتى تطلع الشمس على رؤوس النخل وأطراف الحيتان. We'll talk about this some other day. But he gave so much knowledge. Now the Sahaba, no one stood up. No one stood up and said, question. In fact, after that day, the words of the narrator, this is not the word of the Prophet ﷺ, words of the narrator is, Man hafiza, man nasiya. Whoever remembered, whoever forgot. But the Sahaba used to say that after the demise of the Prophet ﷺ, when we used to see something, he used to remind us, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this. He used to remind us. So, the Sahaba were given so much knowledge in a compressed form. So knowledge doesn't have to be based on time. Sometimes in a short amount of time, you can impart so much knowledge. And that's how this kind of knowledge is imparted. It's not based on, you have to sit for 60 hours lectures and you'll get CPD accreditation. Sorry. This is about a few moments could change your whole world. It could open doors that you may not understand. And so therefore, when Adam a.s. was told, and he did his job, and he exposed his knowledge, then Allah turned to the angels. I mean, look, this is, if you allow me to use this terminology, this is really rubbing it in. It's proper rubbing it in. قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض. Did I not tell you I know the unseen of the heavens and the angels and the earth? And here's the trick, having been caught out. وَأَعْلَمُ مَا تُبْدُونَ وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ. And I also know that which you know, that which you hide, and that which you expose. So the intimation there is, you know a lot more. And yet they say, oh Allah, we only know what you have told us. It's almost like a naughty child. I only know what you told me. But the parent says, I know what you hide. I know what you're hiding and what you're not exposing. This is exactly the same. But this is piyar between Allah and His angels. I know what you are exposing and what you are hiding. So it means you know certain things about this human, but you haven't given credence to those things. You've given credence to rivers of blood. Fasad fil ard. But you haven't looked at the other part of the human race, who will be my proper khulafa, my khalifas. So this incident tells you about your capacity as humans to have the quantity of knowledge in a manner that science cannot fathom. Well, it has, although it's called science fiction. But the reality is that your mind has so much potential. And you will say, well, how does a mind of this nature, given its deficit in memory, the reality, it's all about configuration. It's all at once, everything is configured. Nothing is lost. Everything is there. That's why that child of 3 years old, who still is alive, by the way, I haven't made this up, you can Google him, he still is alive, but why they don't expose him in public, I don't know. He had the facility to store all that data. He had the and that 9-year-old girl, Ruqayya, she also, I was shocked how she had the ability. So we have the ability, it's all about how we are wired. You remember, look, two people are listening to the same lecture. You remember something, you forget something. It's all how the wiring is done. But when we start to pay interest in something, we don't have to be told the name of Hollywood actors. We don't have to sit there and say, this is Morgan Freeman is his name. No. There's no Hafizah. It comes automatically.